Let me start by telling you a Zen haiku. This is a poem by Matsuo Baso, a famous Zen master, and he says, "Old pond, a frog jumps in, the sound of water." Now, although to a logical mind it doesn't make any sense that what is he trying to say in this poem. However, it is believed that the stillness of the pond represents the state of silence and oneness with nature. The frog jumping into it represents the moment of happening, and the sound of water represents the moment of enlightenment. So, how can science help us to get this interpretation? How can logic and reasoning can help us understand the meaning of this haiku? Or the haiku of Hokushi, for example, another great Japanese poet, which says, "I write, erase, rewrite, erase again, and then a poppy blooms." I want to ask, which branch of science can interpret the meaning of this haiku, or of any other poem for that matter? Why do we enjoy the sound of falling water? Why do we see beauty in flowers? How do people get enlightened? Science doesn't have the answers to these questions, but that doesn't mean it won't have in future either. But the problem with the answers is that it destroys the experience, but it cannot create it. Even though we know the answer why the rose flower is beautiful, we cannot create that beauty. We can't create the soil. In fact, we cannot create a single atom in this universe. By saying this, I have no intention to denigrate science. It is absolutely important in its place. I am only trying to highlight its limitations. Science can make you smart and highly intelligent, but hardly ever it makes you a wise person. Science is totally based on rationality and reason. It has no space for irrationality. According to science, if there is light, there is no darkness. Whereas a wise man would say, because there is darkness, there is light. According to science, the purpose of your birth is life and living endlessly. Whereas a wise man would say, the purpose of your birth is death. Birth and death are not two different things, they are the same. Science would say A is A and B is B. They are two different things and there is no correlation between them. If you want to have A, do not look at B. Remove the B as much as you can. Whereas according to wisdom, A and B are not two. They are the same. B can't exist without A. One's existence demands another's. The more you will have B, the more there will be A. Science and logic demand consistency, but the only thing which is consistent in nature is inconsistency, since everything exists because of its opposite. Therefore, Buddha, Kabir, Socrates, and Lao Tzu were not scientists, but they are the most respected and studied people of all time, irrespective of the dogmas and religion attached to them, because they were not intelligent, but wise. But you must be thinking, have I gone crazy? Why am I talking about all these things? How does it all relate to postmodernism? Well, maybe not. But then what is postmodernism? How can you describe it? According to postmodernists, postmodernism is not a doctrine. It has no founder and it doesn't have any particular book to learn from. Postmodernism is a type of sensitivity, a way of looking at things which can influence styles in literature, art and architecture, in religious writings, and even in moral and social practices. But how can you know that you have this sensitivity in you? How would you know that you are a postmodern, a true contemporary? To know this, we can do a very small activity. I would describe a type of society to you, and you need to think about whether you believe in those principles or not. So let's start with the first one. This society believes that religious dogma is the ultimate reference point in settling issues. Religious leaders hold the most powerful posts in public life. Most people go to religious places of worship not because of their conviction or inner experience, because if they won't go, people will beat the shit out of them. There would be fines, physical punishments, or even death. Not just this, religious texts are supposed to have all the answers, whether it is your spiritual life or your relationship, your health, sickness, or your travel. Religious texts have you covered for all. And last but not the least, people believe the sun, moon, stars, and the shape of earth are exactly like it is written in none other than the religious texts. And if you don't agree with any of these statements, then congratulations, you are not a pre-modern person. If you do not agree with this society, then you are not living in 1500th century. But if you are not a pre-modern person, then who are you? Well, here is another society you can think about. This society has strong confidence in reason, particularly scientific reason. Any knowledge obtained through scientific methods is considered more reliable and higher than other forms of knowledge. The main characteristics of this society are rationality, dualism, the search for absolute knowledge, and belief in progress, and they are proud of the place they have given to science. Let me explain all of them in brief. This society believes that reason is the highest arbiter of truth. There is nothing we cannot explore through reason. And this thinking comes from Cartesian philosophy because for him and other rationalists like Kant, Schelling, Fichte, and Hegel, the surest and the most evident certainties came through reason. For this society, reality is divided into spirit and matter, where and because of which the meaning is formed of anything. They have called it reason or spirit. Therefore, human beings as well are a combination of spirit and matter. They have limited their exploration of truth and reality to reason only. For them, nothing else exists beyond reason in the human mind. This society believes that there could be the possibility of finding absolute knowledge. The philosophers of this society believe that what we need is the right methodology to discover the truth, which would be absolutely valid and unassailable. It would be true for everyone, everywhere, irrespective of conditions and times. And therefore, philosophers like Descartes and Kant in particular establish unshakable foundations for their philosophy. This society believes in unlimited progress. They say diseases which we cannot treat today will be treated by medicines which we will invent tomorrow. There would be no wars because disputes would settle rationally between countries because of the mediums of communication. They are optimists for the future. And a person like Sigmund Freud would say the reason is our real God. If we do not have the solution today, human reason will discover the solutions tomorrow. This society accepts scientific knowledge and technology as most perfect type of knowledge. To be in this society is meant to believe in science and recognize its superiority. Science will solve all our problems and make our individual and social lives safer, comfortable, and better in every way. They believe in science this much that they have built a ship which is considered unsinkable and they don't need to carry enough lifeboats in it. Now, if you believe in these ideas and the concept of this society, then congrats, you are a modern person living in the modern age which lasted from the 16th century up to the middle of the 20th century. But what came after that? What is that which denies rationality and reason as the highest arbiter of truth? Who doesn't consider science superior? This is the age of postmodernism. It started with the sinking of the unsinkable ship called Titanic, followed by two world wars. The blind faith in science came under question. The confident, progress-oriented, supposedly rational and scientific way of thinking that marked modernity was shocked by the developments in the 20th century. Far from being a time of peace and harmony, humanity witnessed an unprecedented level of atrocities and cruelties such as the genocide of millions of Jews, dropping the atomic bomb and colonizing weak nations for their resources. The promise of no war was never fulfilled. The treatment of diseases became a never-ending business, and the reliability of science, reason, and logic became the cause of anxiety, tension, and depression. This deep disappointment with modernity's promises and the awareness of the double-edged nature of science led many thinkers to question the certainties on which the modern period was built. This realization that these certainties of modernity are unquestioned is one of the marks of postmodernism. So let's see what are those traits that mark this new sensitivity. The foundation of colonization was built upon their false belief in the superiority of their culture and morals. We can understand it very clearly from a quote from Macaulay, where he claimed that one shelf of Western books was superior to the whole literary output of other cultures. Therefore, European writings of all kinds, from so-called scientific writings to children's stories and comic books, presented Asians as inferior and Africans as savage. Europeans thought of themselves as more cultured, better, more benevolent, and bearers of a superior culture. But the superiority was exposed as false when the colonial period ended and people saw the cruelty and inhumanity of colonial rule. The most associated name with postmodernism is Francis Lyotard, who defined postmodernism as incredulity toward metanarratives. But what did he mean by this? In order to justify a particular position, you would need some general theories or unexamined worldviews, which you need to call superior to others. To prove your doctrine as valid for everyone, everywhere, and this phenomenon of proving one type of knowledge as superior to others is known as metanarratives. Thus, if I want to promote science as the best type of knowledge, I would need a meta-narrative. Hence, Lyotard sees any branch of knowledge as just one type of knowledge. In fact, he said scientific knowledge is a kind of discourse. He doesn't see science as inherently superior to others. To give you another example of a meta-narrative, then it would be the economic theory of Karl Marx about the exploitation of workers. He proposed Marxism as solution for economic exploitation everywhere, claiming to have a universally valid theory that would work in all settings. This would be for postmoderns a meta-narrative, hence suspect. Every word finds its meaning in another word. Therefore, no matter how many words we use to explain an idea, one always needs to look for another word to understand it. But still, we have to use words since we have no other way of communicating ideas. At the same time, the words we use are inadequate to express what we want to. In this sense, words are both right and wrong. The deconstruction intellectual movement is associated with the French thinker Jacques Derrida. Derrida's ideas are hard to understand. To deconstruct a text means to take it apart into its constitutive elements and see how the text itself, in a way, undermines the doctrines it holds. Derrida has said much about the need to erase what we write. This is the last concept which I want to highlight about postmodernism. By end of history, postmoderns mean three things. First, they question this assumption that human beings are progressing to an even better state of being or society. Human beings have always been more or less the same in every society we have seen. The crimes that were present before are present today. In fact, many new crimes have emerged. The development of reason and scientific knowledge couldn't able to bring any qualitative difference in human beings. The second thing they say, what we have is not raw history but historiography done by particular nations or persons. We do not have any one objective in writing history. Thus, the history of the British period in India would look different from an English historian who believed in the superiority of British culture to an Indian historian who saw colonization as immoral. Thirdly, postmoderns do not believe that history has a direction or unity. Rather, they think that events that make up history are of too many different kinds to fit into any one coherent whole. Every attempt at writing history is to create a narrative about one culture, one event, one reason, or one cause. The postmodernist suspicion of meta-narratives can help us to listen to many forgotten stories of ordinary people, smaller nations, and less powerful cultures. Postmodernism frees each discipline to be itself, rather than compare itself to experimental science and be treated as inferior. Thus, Kalidasa's writings or the Ajanta Ellora's paintings or the transformative knowledge of religions cannot be judged by the canons of science. Each field is unique and independent. The reason, which was the queen in modernity, is seen as just one of the paths to reaching the truth. Postmodernism gives an important place to the role of the non-rational. This is partly because of the frightening truth that very logical and brilliant people did some horrible things to others in the modern period and even today. Reason alone does not seem to have a reliable guide and teacher in human affairs. This was a short and non-technical look at this contemporary phenomenon called postmodernism. Thank you for watching.